Okay, we are live. Welcome to WhizGirls Academy Super Secret Agent Trainees. Today we have the magnificent Adela Jamal. Adela is our master trainer today, and she is a tech enthusiast, a DEI advocate. She is an MIT graduate from the business school. She has a wonderful journey and she's going to share all of it with us. So we're super excited to have you. Thank you so much, Adela, for sharing your journey with us.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us about your childhood.
Okay, so my childhood is a little bit different. And I say that because I was born and raised in South India, and my father is Indian and my mother is white American. And this is also at a time where we didn't have the connectivity and the technology that we have today. So imagine growing up in a very distant land with no internet and very, simple times. But it was probably one of the, best childhoods. I had amazing family, friends, and cousins around me. My cousins being, my first sort of set of best friends, and really grew up with a lot of amazing trips, a lot of nature, a lot of outdoorsiness. I went to an international school. And then eventually I did make my way over to the US and I grew up in Northern California.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So, what about your passions and hobbies as a child and now? And tell us, like, if you got your dream job.
Okay, so going back to, being raised in India and my father being an engineer and an entrepreneur and my mother being a musician, a teacher, and an artist, I had a very creative sort of foundation. And for me, just looking at, what I've done, I always think back to the curiosity. And so for me, I was always very curious about learning about new things. At one point, I wanted to be an archaeologist because I just wanted to kind of travel and discover. But I share that because I think having all those elements and then also people around me who really supported that and encouraged it, it really helped me sort of lean into curiosity being different, maybe not looking like everybody else in the room or having a very, let's call it typical background. And that's really what led me to having my first job in Silicon Valley, working for a venture capitalist, running an early stage health startup, and opportunities that I don't think otherwise would have A, been on my radar, and B, would have been within my reach. And today, what I've done is sort of pivot from working at startups, working in consulting, incubators, being an executive at Sony Pictures, and then actually starting my own fund. But all of those things really leaning on not only the curiosity, but then also finding other people who had a very similar mindset.
Okay, so you said a word that I don't think our super secret agents know. What is a venture capitalist? And then tell us about how you founded your Mile Mark Capital as well.
Sure. So venture capital in the simplest term would be someone who is raising money from investors, right? And we're sort of the middleman, middlewoman. So we raise capital and money, and then we invest in startups. So thinking of the brightest and the best entrepreneurs and the ideas. In fact, most likely everyone here has interacted with a company which at some point started off as just an idea. Maybe an idea you and your partner have started, an idea that started out of your garage. If you think of everything that we're using at home, think of Apple. Apple actually started with Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, in a garage, and it was a startup at one point. So the role that I have now is that I invest in companies who are using AI, who are led by diverse teams. So that could be, female founders as well. And they're all coming out of innovative hubs. And so my background, while it has been not just in venture capital for, my entire 16, 17 years, it's always been in tech and finance. And so what I did along my journey was really think about how can I be impactful? And since I've had a very strong lens on diversity and everything that's, supporting young women, young girls, and women in tech, women in business, this was my way to sort of pivot my career and do something that would be impactful and help that next generation of entrepreneurs. So like the audience here, at some point, you might have your own idea and your own company, and you really want to partner with people who support that dream and that vision.
That's so true. Okay, going back to your journey from college to Sony to MIT and to now being a founder of a VC fund, Tell us all about that. If you want to show us pictures as well, we would love to see them.
Okay, perfect. Let me share screen for just a quick moment here. I'll go full screen. How does that look?
Perfect.
All right. So I put together just a few pictures because it does sort of, tell the story of my career, not from the startup perspective, but Sony Pictures is very different from what I'm doing today. However, the wonderful people that I met along the way, the mentors, the advisors, the partners that I had at Sony have been incredible and are still people that I lean on very heavily today. So if you haven't been to the Sony Pictures campus, they are located in Culver City, very close by, right off the 405. And they're one of the few historic studios that are, I would say, more closer to the west side instead of sort of being buried, outskirts of LA. But just a great history there. And it's also Culver City, which, as many of you might have read, is really like where a lot of like the old Hollywood studios first started. And so I had a tremendous journey there, working on a ton of different technology initiatives, supporting all the different stakeholders. So working with folks in motion picture, folks in corporate, even in animation, and just had a tremendous time with Sony. The next picture I wanted to share with the group here is with my small cohort of women. So out of 150, we were 20% female. And MIT actually has improved those numbers. They are 50-50, closer to being male and female. But I went there to get my master's in business, had the most, amazing, impactful experience, got to partner with incredible professors, with incredible companies, and then also the classmates being very international. It was just a tremendous opportunity. But the women that you see here in the picture that I'm sharing, each of them came from such different, diverse backgrounds. And I just so appreciate, everything they brought to the table. And also the fact that they weren't afraid to take a chance to go back to school to get their master's and then get back into their careers. And some of them also were pivoting to do things that are more impactful, like what I shared with being a venture capitalist. So incredibly proud of that group, still very close with them, and just, a very unique opportunity that I feel very privileged to have encountered.
And how long were you at MIT for?
I was there for about a year and a half, so about 18 months. And I love Cambridge and Boston. And, if you haven't visited, it's just a fantastic bubble, innovative bubble. In fact, one of the more, I would say, dense cities in the country, maybe even in the world, with I believe over 1,000 universities sort of spread out through Massachusetts and that eastern, northeast sort of geography. But really, really a bubble where I think, if you haven't visited, you should get there. You should see it. You can work in the labs. You can see what they're building. That really is the hub for so many of the technologies and the services that all of us are using today.
And also tell us why you decided to go to MIT.
Sure. So rewinding the clock a little bit here, I had focused on technology and finance for a long time. Along my journey, I would say, having been from India, I noticed that there was a lot happening with diversity. And very similar to Shireen and WhizGirls and everybody who's here on the platform, I noticed there was a lot happening at the intersection of innovation and technology, women, and diversity, but not everybody was thinking about it in the same manner that I was. And I remember speaking to various mentors and different advisors and thinking that, well, this must be happening and other people are working on initiatives in parallel. And I learned very quickly that that was not the case. And if I had that drive and that vision to do something bigger, it probably entailed taking a pause from my, call it typical career and going back to school. And so what I did with MIT was first and foremost work on a 6-month, let's call it independent study with a professor. And we actually looked at what was happening with women and women's advancement and technology. And that's also where I met my partners. And it was exactly what I had in mind as far as, what I wanted to do next, which is to really align with people who understand what I want to do in the future, who are pushing for change, who understand that diverse groups have not always had the support and the mentors and the resources to do something different. And that whole environment was truly, the most incredible 18 months that I could have ever asked for, because I not only pivoted from what I was doing before, but I aligned with true thought leaders and change makers and individuals I'd, essentially been looking for the last decade. So that was really the sort of genesis and what propelled me towards MIT, and also what propelled me towards the right people.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think everyone says there's never a straight line to your life mission or life purpose. And it sounds like initially you were in San Francisco and Northern California doing like venture capital and like investing and things like that. And then you kind of pivoted a little bit, but you still ended up back where you started.
That's right. That's right. And very grateful for that full circle journey, because for many of us, we are questioning that uncharted territory. We're not sure if that's the norm and if it's okay, and what your life will turn out like if you take chances. But just speaking from most recent experiences, I think the most incredible opportunities can open up if you just challenge yourself, and if you lean into that fear, and if you lean into the unknown, and if you also really have a vision and a mission in mind. If you're the only person with that idea, it's okay to lean into it. You will find partners and other supporters along the way.
Yeah, that's so true. All right. How do you let's go back to this, and I'll go back to some questions.
Sure. Well, I can just very quickly also just share. So as I mentioned a moment ago, pivoting into venture capital, finding partners that, really believe in the vision. And I have to call out, two of the partners that I've started working with, Seb and Mike. They're also, girl dads, right? So they have young daughters at home. And so when we think about who we want to support, what startups we want to champion, and what we want to do for the future, I'm also working with individuals who really see that and very much at home, where they want to create a future that's going to be better and brighter for their daughters, and where opportunities should be equal. And I share that because I think that's really, really crucial, to find individuals who really, truly understand. And it's not just, them having to envision what that life could be, or what that looks like, or what challenges are. They understand it from a very personal perspective. And I'll mention one last point, which is around community. A big aspect of what I've done in the past, how I even met Shireen, Women in Tech, WhizGirls, a lot of that has to do with the power of connection and community. And I think for the girls here as well, that's so, so important, to really find that tribe and that group that's going to believe in you, that's going to support you, and that's really going to be there for you for the long journey that, is ahead of you.
That's so true. So true. Thanks for sharing that. What's your experience been like when co-founding Milemark Capital?
Well, it's not been easy. And I share that because most things that are different and unique are not easy. And you're most likely going to go against the grain. And while there are many venture capitalists, and venture capital has been around, for decades now, it is an industry that was typically male dominated. And even today, very few venture capitalists and executives at venture capital firms are female. And if you think of the slice of it, less than 8% are women executives in this field. And if you are from an underrepresented community, you're probably in the 5%. And if you are, for example, a Black woman who has started her own fund, you're in the 1%. So I share that because those statistics are similar to other fields that might be, generally speaking, male dominated, but it is changing. And so my journey, while it has been challenging, has been the most rewarding. And I share that because it allows me to connect with, groups like this. It allows me to work with the best and brightest entrepreneurs. It also helps me to learn about what's happening in the world and getting that first row opportunity to entrepreneurship, to innovation, and really thinking about what are we creating for a better tomorrow in sectors of significance. So think about healthcare, think about finance, think about agriculture. All of these industries are really primed for, let's call it, the innovation that it needs. And especially looking at it with AI, this is a very special time in history. We don't see this very often, but there's a massive change coming. And so as much as it's a challenge, it's the most rewarding work that I've ever done.
It's interesting that you brought up challenges, because I think that's one thing we haven't dived into yet at WhizGirls Academy, and how you handle those challenges and how you keep going when you keep getting challenges. So can you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I'll share first that when you hit a challenge, I'm speaking very broadly about it, it is so crucial that you have the right supporters for you. And very specifically, that means I will take Sharon as an example. She is a phenomenal mentor and advisor. She's an advocate. And having someone like that, on your wings just to support you as you're going through hardships or you're trying to figure out what your next step it looks like is going to be exceptionally impactful. And so for me, I actually have, what I like to call my personal board of directors, about 12 people, and I lean on them. And so I actually talk to them about whether it's something along the lines of, just setting up the company, whether it's questions, whether it's financials, whether it's about the sectors that we're supporting, whether it's about, personal challenges. I have a group of people, men and women, that I rely on and I ask for support. And I think this applies at all levels. It could be a teacher, it could be a friend, but it's just to keep in mind that you shouldn't back off when there's a hardship and when you hit a challenge. You should actually ask for help, and you should feel secure enough that asking for help doesn't mean that you're any less amazing or that you're not smart. In fact, it just shows that you're secure and that you're going to build with a lot of other people's inputs and the best guidance, and that you can overcome those challenges.
That's so true. I think it's important to know that you can have like people that help you and support you around. And I think that's one thing we want to really push for our super secret agents. Like it's important to have, friends and people that support you no matter what, and they want you to win. And I think that's like huge. So thank you for sharing that. That's a big one. On that note, what advice would you give our aspiring secret agent trainees in the audience?
Good question. So many thoughts around it, but I think very specifically for this audience, I would say don't be afraid to try something new, and don't be afraid to be the only person in the room that looks like you. And I share that because I think for everybody in the audience, you are going to find yourself in a position where you might not feel very comfortable. You might feel like you have to take a big risk. You might feel like it's a big challenge and other people are doing things that are easier, but you have a passion and you have sort of a drive to do something. So whether it's to be a coder, whether it's to get into technology, whether it's to join a company, whether it's to apply to do an internship that, that it's going to be very, very different for you, I would say don't be afraid to sort of lean into it and then really harness that uniqueness that you bring to the table. And you never know, once you start, you might also encourage other people around you who are from different backgrounds to do the same thing. So just keep that in mind, because this is a really, really crucial time in history, especially around technology, where we need everybody. We need the youth. We need the next generation to really lean into things that historically they haven't done.
So true. Also, on that note, what did you learn when you were 11 years old that you've kept with you today?
Oh, okay. Well, I'll share a fun little side story. When I was about maybe, 10 and a half, 11, I was very much into climbing. So think of climbing buildings, trees, parks. And I always just had this mentality of, if I can see it, I can reach it. And many a times, this happened, I think about 3 times, I would climb up trees or buildings or structures and get to the point where I wasn't sure how to get down. But I share that because I even think of that today in everything that I'm doing and everything that's around us, that you need to be able to see something and have a goal and not be afraid to reach it. In those 3 scenarios, I always got down. I always got help if I got stuck. But it's something I still think of today, where I'm very happy I have that drive in me. And I'm very happy that I'm still this very inquisitive, curious child, if you will. And I'm always, trying to reach that next sort of rung or that next branch. And I'm always looking up. I'm very rarely looking down.
That's a really good point. And I think climbing is like always like climbing for something bigger and better. Like you never stop, you just keep going. That's huge. So thanks for sharing that. All right, we're going to go into some student questions now. And let's see, this one is kind of interesting. You are a role model, and role models are real life superheroes. Have you had someone who inspired you in your STEM journey? And how did the encouragement help you become even more awesome?
Oh, great question. Yes. this actually goes back to probably one of my earlier jobs. And I remember working with a very small team. And in that team, there was a very good coach and a mentor. And he was an individual, and he's still very much there as a supporter. He would push the education. And I share that because not everyone in our lives, especially when you get into careers, will take the time to actually teach you things. And we had, I believe he called it breakfast and learns. And we would really evaluate the latest technologies. And at this point, I was living in the Bay Area and working on some really unique projects. And we got an opportunity to actually work with some of the biggest corporations that you can think of in the Silicon Valley area. And having him as a mentor who would actually do, think of it almost like a course where he would break it down and say, okay, well, today we're going to focus on, let's say, software or hardware, or, what's happening with just sort of like data centers, storage, cloud computing. I mean, these were all topics that were very hot and relevant at that point. And having somebody like that to actually spend the time to teach you, to mentor you, is something I really hold in high regard. And it's something I actually want to do and give back as I progress in my career and hire new talent and create that ecosystem. And I think it's also really important for the audience here to keep that in mind, because a lot of the time there's a lot of work, but there's not a lot of time to actually learn and grow. And so even if you're not getting that directly from your mentor or someone that's, your role model, if you can carve the time out for yourself, you're just going to look so different and you're going to think differently just in, less than 12 months if you just spend that time to educate yourself.
So true. That brings up 2 points, actually. One is, when did you first learn about the word STEM, and how old were you, if you can remember? And then the other one is about mentors, which is a question from a student.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So STEM, and I think this is a little bit different for me because I was in the Bay Area. I think it was pretty early on, maybe not as early as it is today. I think today you're learning about it in elementary school. I think I would have been like early high school when that term was really being used, because that term wasn't as common, especially when I was growing up. But being in the Bay Area, we did start seeing that arise. We started seeing little programs. We started seeing things happening at the Computer History Museum. We started seeing things, with Facebook, with Apple, and programs really developing. But it's nowhere close to what it is today. And I'm glad for that. I'm glad that STEM and STEM courses are actually being introduced at the earliest ages in education.
Yeah, that's true. I think STEM wasn't a thing until like recently, but it's great that like in elementary school they're learning about it, and it's,
Mm-hmm.
we're working on moving the needle. So thank you for being a part of that lead.
That's right.
For that. Yeah. All right. Another student question. You're you are a mentor magician helping others. Can you tell us about someone you mentored who became a super good as a business or tech because of your help?
Oh, sure. So I'll share this, very brief story as well. When I was working at Sony Pictures, I was a part of a group called Women in Technology. I was co-president and worked with phenomenal women who were very like-minded, wanted to, change the sort of narrative around women in tech and business. And I was supporting and creating several groups in India and in Japan. And I remember very specifically the group in India had, let's call them sort of the newer employees who had been joining. And they would put together lunch and learns, and they would do very similar fireside chat and Q&A. And there was one woman in particular who I've, stayed in touch with, and she would just message me very casually, with any question that she had. I would respond. I would talk to her about her trajectory, her career path, and then also talk to her about, what working in India would look like versus being in the US. And I'm really proud to say that, today she actually is doing her master's in Canada. She's had several internships in technology companies. She's found this beautiful path, which I really don't think 5 or 6 years ago was even, in her mind or something that she could really feel was attainable. And I think it's partly due to many people like myself who were supporting her and actually encouraging her to take that leap and like live out that dream, but also to show her that, she doesn't have to do what everybody is doing around her. Like, she didn't have to stay in the company. She was able to spread her wings And I think she's just somebody that I'm immensely proud of. I don't know if I had the courage at her age to do what she's done, to really leave her family and just travel around the world. But she's doing incredibly well. And I just know that, in no time, she's going to be an executive at her own company, or maybe even start her own company. But very, very proud of her.
That's awesome. Thank you. All right. Another student question, which kind of leads into this as well. You've worked in business in different countries. Can you tell us about a time when you used your business skills to make a big change in a company?
Sure. So that's a great question. And I think having grown up in India and seen what business in India looks like, and also a father who has his own company as an entrepreneur and engineer, I very early on understood that, being a woman, you might have to fight a little bit harder to get the respect, the attention, to get the, let's call it the space to sort of exist. That looked very different. But I took that with me as I was even working for, corporations. And I remember very specifically working on a deal that was global with multiple partners around the world. And if it hadn't been for my experience and understanding that cultures actually do business in different ways. So, for example, being an American, we have a much more sort of direct style. But if you're working with companies out of Asia, it's a very different style. It's very much about respect. It's about engaging the relationship, building the relationship, and then getting into details. There have been, to the question, several projects that I don't think would have been as successful if I had not built those relationships first. And that was also with the Sony family, with Sony PlayStation, electronics, music, pictures. They're a Japanese company, right? So headquarters is actually out of Tokyo. And so even working with your own stakeholders to get a critical project done, we had to rely very heavily on the respect and the relationship. And then the business and the deal came secondary.
That makes a lot of sense. I think it's important to know the culture and the background and all the things and how they do business compared to how we do business here in America. It's very different.
And especially in today's day and age, I would imagine most of the folks in the audience are going to be working with international partners at some point.
Yeah, well, because we're virtual more than ever, and
Mm-hmm.
it makes a lot of sense. Absolutely. These are the things that they are looking forward to in the future. Okay, another student question. You're part of tech and investing. That's amazing. Can you tell us about a time when you used your tech skills to help make a startup super cool and successful?
Oh, good question. I would say that one's kind of in progress, but I can even share when I was running and as an operator for an early stage startup in the Bay Area, I really came on as hire number two and very quickly was the person who was essentially running the whole company. And at that time, I had free reign to find the partners, to hire who I wanted to. And I share that because running a tech company is so much more than just one sort of, silver bullet. It's about who you bring into the company. So it's about hiring, it's about finding the right partners. And it's also around, what you envision for that company going forward. And I was with this startup for several years. And so right now, I even think about how important that is for the startups that we talk to. And, they have great ideas, right? So we're working with startups who've already created these genius concepts, services, products. They've already got some traction. And my role and my team's role is really to enhance that. So they might have had their head down in development, but they might not be the business people. They might not have the right connections. And going back to what we talked about with community and relationships, they might not have the right sort of network to help that company grow. And most recently, there was a company where, they didn't really have their footprint in California. And I was proud to make some introductions, and they were able to have a proof of concept, do a pilot of their product to see if it would work out here in California. And I can't share too much more about them because they're still an early stage company, but the power of that connection, that community, and the ability to connect the dots is something that you shouldn't overlook. It's something that I believe even in our future is going to really help us succeed and also help our startups succeed.
That's good. That's really good. Thanks for sharing. All right, next student question. You mix innovation and diversity. Can you tell us about a time when you use both things to create something really cool?
Yeah, that's a great one. So I think this has come up a couple of times over the last, decade, because I just very much focus on diversity and believe in that. I believe that all of us should have the right opportunities and, all have a seat at the table. Very recently, I think just having been a part of Mile Mark, so I started the company along with 3 other partners. Being a woman and being just there at the table, as simple as that sounds, is a huge accomplishment. And I share that because when you are a startup, and let's say you're a female founders only get 2% of venture capital funding. So that means in all the dollars that are spent on companies and investments, only 2% were going to companies that were led by women, which is unfortunate. It's still, quite astonishing. It's something that we're working towards. But think about the impact then if you have a woman across the table from you who wants to hear your story and wants to invest in you and wants to support you. And I share that because I think that has been one of, my most impactful sort of gestures and moves in the recent years, is to actually be that person across the table who wants to hear from that woman, who wants to hear about their idea. And guess what? If their pitch isn't perfect, that's okay. We all have hard days. I'm going to give them a second shot at it. And that's really what I believe in. And that is focusing on diversity, innovation, technology, and really a brighter future for all of us. Because if you support those entrepreneurs, you could be supporting the next big wave and you could really be impacting people's lives.
So true. All right, another student question. What motivates you to continue pushing yourself in your career path?
I love that. I think it's a couple of things, but number one would be seeing the difference that you can make. And I know that sounds very cliche and we all talk about making a difference, but once you really know what is going to help, wake you up and keep you going, for me, it's really partnering with the right individuals and right communities and seeing an impact. That keeps me excited. It helps me push through the times which might be slower or more challenging. And to also work with other incredible women like Shireen, like a number of great women here in LA, and also, that I met on the East Coast. I think that is the best gift, and I couldn't be happier with the work that I'm doing. So there's something called Ikigai. If you haven't heard of it, you can look it up. It's an old Japanese term, and it basically means, finding what you're passionate about, what you're good at, and then also what the world needs. And I think what I'm doing right now is exactly the Ikigai. And so I have no problem sort of motivating myself because I love the work that I do.
Yeah, that's a big one, actually. Sharing Ikigai with us is awesome. And I think our super secret agents will really get a kick out of that moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big word, it's a big acronym, but it's a good one to remember. So
Mm-hmm.
really, thank you for sharing that. On that note, how can our special secret agents start looking into tech and AI?
Yeah, I love that. So very excited because I think in today's, technology, transparency, and all the tools that I know everybody has at their fingertips, there are many different ways to learn about what's happening with technology, with startups, with AI. And that might be as simple as, just jumping onto maybe a couple of podcasts, right? It might also be for the girls here who want to actually learn about it. There's groups like All Raise, and they actually talk about female entrepreneurs and female venture capitalists and what's happening in that world. And there's also great local events. And so sometimes I think we don't actually have to look very far within your own city. If you were interested, there are always workshops and different platforms. And if age is a barrier or, transport is a barrier, I would say just start with, just looking up what's happening. For example, San Francisco TechCrunch Disrupt is coming up in about a week or two. And you can see like the biggest companies and you can learn about what they're doing. And guaranteed AI is going to be a part of that conversation. You can't escape it if you try. But then also within your communities, if there is something that you wanted to dig into, maybe at school or within, the local colleges, there are so many programs. And of course, what Shireen is doing, there's so many programs and so many connections to where you can get plugged in for free. And then, of course, I love to reach out to people through social media who maybe resonate with you. If they're working on something that you're interested in through a program, I would say for sure reach out, learn about them. If there's a woman that, you're pulled towards and you love the work that she's doing, let her know. And you never know how you might be able to partner or intern in the future if that's something that you want to do as well.
That's a really good point. I think it's not being afraid to reach out and really like share your passions. And I think that's where it
Mhm.
starts because that's where you started. So
Yeah. And people love to support your passions, right? They would much rather hear from you and what you're truly interested in versus a very generic, canned message. You need to always think about what is going to resonate with them and like how you have that alignment with them. And most likely they will respond.
so, so true. Yeah. Okay. So another student question. What superpowers do you have that pushed you to where you are today?
Ooh, I love that one. And I know I've touched on it a few times, but for me, I really think it's the ability to get to understand somebody at their core. And that comes from me having had a very different childhood and growing up between two continents and not having had the easiest path, not looking like everyone around me, not sounding like everyone around me. This American accent you hear today took a very long time to craft. And so I always think about there's a person who shows up in front of you physically, but then there's a real deeper person inside. And I always love to connect with that person and I love to spend the time to do that. And what I've heard is that most people don't. So for me, I think that's a part of my superpower.
That's a really good one. And like I said, today we're learning all about these things that we've never learned so far at WhizGirls Academy. So I really appreciate you being
Oh,
so raw and honest with us.
happy to.
One more student question. What is the one thing that has resonated with you along your journey to success?
Yeah, I love that question. I think it's well, we might know the term. Shereen and I have heard this, quite a bit, but it's to not be afraid to fail, right? And that can be applied literally in your daily life, in critical projects where you work, in friendships. And it's something I keep in mind because if you want to really have a life that I believe is going to be very rewarding and enriching and impactful, you have to be able to take risks and you have to also be okay with failing. And not all of us were raised with that mentality. We were raised maybe to be perfect and to not fail. But I think that's actually the opposite of what we've learned. And now I think we have enough data points and there are, several books are on this and there are several speakers around it, but really being comfortable failing and then just picking up yourself and then going again. Because guess what? At every iteration, you're just better, stronger, brighter, and you will succeed.
So true. Failure is just the road to success. Just like got to keep going. So, so true. Okay, on that note, looking into the future is exciting. What do you imagine for girls in STEM down the road, and how can we make sure that everyone gets a chance to be part of the STEM adventure?
Hmm. Well, I'm hoping in the future that programs, like WhizGirls and so many others, which have been really flourishing, will continue to exist. But I also hope that it will be the norm, that we won't have to search so hard to find platforms and groups to support us. What I would love to see is just equal opportunity, right? And we actually very recently had Women's Equality Day. And something I was sharing with a friend around that is I want us to all just be our genuine, authentic selves and be able to work in any field, lean into STEM, and not have to really work around, breaking down that barrier and being much more well accepted. And I think the data is there, right? The data shows that women are incredible engineers, technicians, and we can do really any job that we want to. So my goal and hope for the future is that we won't have as many barriers. And I know it's already changing from the time that I was in school to where we are now with careers, but I know we've still got some ways to go. So I'm hoping also that industries will be much more welcoming and that workplaces will be much more accommodating so that we don't have to fight as hard.
That's a really good point. And on that note, another question about dreams for the future when it comes to tech, diversity, and making the world better for everyone. What would be that dream?
Yeah. I think along the lines of technology, my hope is that all of the tools that we have and all of the services and the companies that we engage with will be much more, I would say, adapted towards individuals with different backgrounds. Right now, it's not. Right now, we certainly cater to homogeneous teams, very much who's had the power. And I'm hoping that in the future, it's going to be actually catered to individuals from different backgrounds, differently abled. We haven't seen that really get to where it needs to be. And so I'm really excited and hopeful for a world with technology that is supporting individuals from all backgrounds, men and women, but really thinking about, where we're heading. And I would say with technology, and even just look at what we're doing today, we're sitting here having a virtual conversation. I think we're getting there, but we've still got a long road ahead of us.
That's a really good point. I think one more student question that's really important. You're a DEI champion. Can you tell us about a project where you made a company more diverse and awesome?
Sure. I think that company or that group would be at Sony Pictures. We were literally working with groups out of Japan, out of India, and, just being able to pull in individuals who came from different backgrounds and being able to work on projects with them, or being able to choose who you want to work with. That was incredible. And even now, I would say, what I get to do is I get to think about, who do I want to bring into my own organization, right? So we've sort of lived these journeys where other people are dictating what it should look like and who should be a part of it. But now I'm most excited because I get to interview and cast a very wide net, as far as looking for diverse candidates, and just I'm looking for the best, right? And the way that I've seen it is the best candidates and the best talent happen to be diverse. So I don't even have to put a very specific filter. I'm just looking for the best candidates. And I'm so proud to say that some of the most incredible people that I've been talking to recently have been women, and women from underrepresented groups. And I'm so thrilled to give them opportunities that maybe, they hadn't seen before, but not because I'm doing anything special, because I'm just truly treating them and evaluating them fairly and casting a wide enough net so that I can even, meet them in the first place.
That's a really good point. Okay, so let's talk about how our super secret agents can find you and follow your journey. Is it like a website, LinkedIn, Instagram? What's the best way?
Sure. I think the best way would be Instagram. Adela.Jamal is my handle. I'm also on LinkedIn, Adela Jamal. Very active on both those platforms. And I think I like to share probably more organically on Instagram. So if you're looking for that, definitely find me there and follow me.
Awesome. Thank you. And in terms of Milemark Capital, how can we follow your journey there as well?
Sure. So milemarkcapital.com. We also have a LinkedIn page. So certainly jump on there and follow us. We're just updating our website right now, but we're going to be sharing more about the companies that we've been supporting, the female founders that we're supporting, and we have a lot more in store the rest of this fall here.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay, so now we're going to do something fun. We're going to talk about like a 60-second, quick answer type of thing. And what we're going to start with, what's your favorite toy that you grew up with?
Oh, it would have to be a Slinky, because we never had those and I got it from America.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, Slinkies were awesome. I remember sitting at the top of the stairs and watching it. Yeah, that's awesome.
Simple but satisfying.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Okay, favorite video game?
Super Mario Brothers.
Ooh, did you watch the movie?
I did see the movie. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's very cute. Very cute. I did see it too. All right, favorite sci-fi?
Well, this is really going to date me, but Star Wars.
Okay, that's good to know. I was going to ask you Star Wars versus Star Trek, but I think I know the answer.
Yeah. Well, also hard because Star Trek was one of the first shows that we saw in black and white. Again, keeping in mind I was in India. It was, black and white, and we got everything very late, a couple years later than the US.
So true. I was looking at Star Trek recently, and I was just in awe of everything that he's done, Gene Roddenberry, and all the things from the 60s that were cell phones and just phenomenal things, wild imagination.
And I'd also say the Jetsons were kind of sci-fi because everything they did has actually come true now.
That's right. I was also obsessed with the Jetsons, and there was, AI there, and Rosie the robot and all the things.
That's right.
Yeah.
They had Roomba, they had Zoom, they had the phones. I mean, gosh, we should have just followed them.
Yeah, so true. Okay. Favorite superhero?
Favorite superhero? Gosh, I want to say Wonder Woman because that's what comes to mind. Let's go with Wonder Woman. I
Awesome.
still think I really feel like we're still fighting for a lot of things.
That is very true. Favorite show that you're watching either on TV or streaming like now, and also as a child?
As a child, I used to love Family Matters and the more lighthearted ones. Those were great for me. Now, actually, a show that I recently finished, thanks to Shireen, is Ted Lasso. And it's the most recent show that I actually completed the entirety of. And it was just absolutely incredible.
Yes, that's awesome. Be curious, not judgmental, right? There's so many quotes in that show that we can
Mm-hmm.
pass along to our secret agents that hopefully will all
Believe.
one day.
I think we all need that believe sign above our door as we walk
Yeah,
out the door each day.
yeah, that too. Yeah, I have a couple of them around here. I should probably put one closer over here. Yeah, good point. Okay, so favorite movie growing up?
Favorite movie? Never Ending Story.
Mm,
That one, I'm still haunted in a good way just by the magic in it. And I guess there's a lot of themes there about, just kind of what you envision and what you can create.
okay, yeah. So tell our secret agents about that because I think that's a little bit before their time.
It is. And, broad strokes, it's basically really thinking about, what you can create for your future, different sort of versions of reality. And yes, I mean, at this point, it's decades old. But I remember just being, a young child, and I'd never really seen anything like it. I'd never really thought about fantasy in that way. And even today, I think there are elements of it which I think, gosh, how profound. And also seeing it at such a young age, it's something that, I don't want to lose. I think we all kind of get caught up in real life, but we should actually think about our imagination and like what you can create for yourself. So definitely, if you have time, it's worth looking into. Might not be as cool as effects as the new movies, but still pretty phenomenal writing.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. The imagination. And I think as children, we use our imagination so much. And like now as adults, it's such a different ballgame. We want to use our imagination. We want to meditate. We want to get into that zone, but we got to really work it. But I think as children, it's so much easier.
Yes, and I think it also kind of touches on the importance of play. And so, as you're saying, Sharon, when we're younger, we have the space and the time, and we're encouraged go outside and play for an hour or two, make friends, get outside, get fresh air. But as adults, we really struggle to make time for that. But it's so important. So, yes, it can be in the ways of meditation and other things, but it's also just really, really healthy. It's great for your brains. It's great for development. It's great for creativity. And, many very successful executives and entrepreneurs will say every time they hit a roadblock and they feel like they're stuck, they take a walk outside in nature just to get the air and just to get, the blood flow, but also just to have that space, right? And so creating that space for yourself the way that we did as children can be so, so important.
Yeah, I think we had the best of both worlds because we had the Super Marios and the video games, and then we also had biking outside and
Mm-hmm.
like going to the park and
Yes.
all. Yeah,
And I have to also say, Tetris was one of my favorites. And I know there's like Tetris Blitz and there's like totally different variations of it. But still, till this day, I love some Tetris.
did you watch the movie?
No, I
Oh my
haven't
God, you
seen
got to
it.
watch the movie. I think everybody needs to watch that movie. Actually,
Yeah.
it's phenomenal. It's a story about how Tetris was actually made, and when
Oh,
it's not
fun.
made, it's really really good. I highly
Okay.
recommend
On my
everybody,
list.
all the secret agents, and of course Adela and everyone else who listens to this in the future. Watch the Tetris movie. You'll thank me later, especially if you played Tetris as a child. The
Mm-hmm.
other one I saw recently was the Beanie Babies one. That's also on Apple TV
Mm-hmm.
Plus. So now I'm really pushing that. But yeah, it's also very good. And I'm sure I think
Yeah.
Beanie Babies are back again. But that's also the story of how Beanie Babies was made. And as
Okay.
innovators and entrepreneurs, I think it's important to watch these things and learn from them.
Mhm.
So yeah, highly recommend it.
Yes. Yes, totally agree.
Okay, awesome. So now we're going to do key takeaways, and please let me know if I missed anything. Okay. First one, be curious. Partner with people who support your dreams and visions. Challenge yourself. Lean into the unknown. Don't back off when there is a challenge. Ask for help instead. Asking for help is a good thing. Don't be afraid to try new things. If you can see it, you can reach it. Learn and grow. Be comfortable failing.
Beautiful. I think you got it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Adela. We are so honored and grateful to have you here. We can't wait to see what you do with your new VC fund, Milemark Capital. We're super excited to follow your journey moving forward, and we are again super grateful for you to join us today.
Thank you. What an honor to be here, and just love the time and really love the thoughtful questions. Thanks, Shireen.
Thank you so much, everyone. We'll be back again, actually live tomorrow from a super secret location in LA. So stay tuned for that. And thank you again for joining us at WhizGirls Academy. Bye for now.
Bye.